Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I would say first, we join others, many others in
Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, shows once again that he is way out of his depth and probably should have just stuck to the boardrooms of different financial institutions. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I did a report the other day on Doug Ford and how he was mentioning to his press corps that, somebody should be doing fixing some of these problems. And I'm like, Mr. Ford, that's your job. That's your responsibility. Got me thinking a little later that I probably could be doing more as well, that I probably could be getting out in front and dragging many of these issues into the light of day. To that point, I have elected to take on some of the issues that I up to now have been avoiding, such as the military in Canada. Now, I heard the other day that Mark Carney made an announcement about the spending, and of course I did a little bit of looking into it. There's not really much there except a hope by Mark Carney that it's going to increase recruitment and retention. However, the underlying wokeness of the Liberal government is still a problem, and one of the primary reasons that nobody wants to join the military in Canada, most especially men under 25. You expect them to put their lives on the line. You expect them to follow orders all day, and you then want to tone police them? Anyway, we'll get into that. First, let's look at some of this announcement that Mark Carney made about the spending, because remember that the 5%, right, it has like 1.5% of that 5% can be all about the bureaucracy and the administrative aspect of the military. And of course, there's a lot of administration in the military. For example, like the greatest logistic individual in the history of the wars was Julius Caesar. That was his real secret. He could make sure his supplies were where they needed to be and his men were where they needed to be. I don't want to bore you with the military history of that. I will just point to the fact that there's a lot of administration that goes on in the military. And Mark Carney is relying on that to convince Donald Trump that Canada is spending more to meet Donald Trump's demand that Canada do more to defend themselves. And I can't disagree with Mr. Trump. Nonetheless, let's look at this announcement. And one of the ridiculous things that Mark Carney said in it. Now, I'm not going to bother you with letting Mark Carney tell you all of it, because not only was it mind-numbingly boring, but many of you indicate to me that you can't listen to him. And I don't blame you. So I went to Canada.ca. I took the official release. I'll leave a link down in the description. It breaks down like this. They promised 20% pay increases, but they've only given that to new recruits under a certain rank. As soon as you achieve being an officer, so you'll get a 20% kick if you're enlisted. If you're an officer under a colonel, you'll get a 13% kick. And if you're over a colonel, you'll get an 8% kick. And reservists are getting much less money. One of the other things they're trying to do is reward you for times of service. So if you've up to 10 years, you're getting $2,000. It goes on, and $6,000 maximum if you've been there for more than 20 years, in the military for more than 20 years. They also want to make you think that it's all wonderful and fuzzy by retroactively paying people back to April 1st. So you're going to get this lump sum. They're going to give you this retention bonus, and all of a sudden your taxes are, you might be careful that you're not get put into a different tax bracket and then end up giving it all back to them anyways. Because remember, they don't pay taxes, but they demand that you do. Mark Carney sends all of his money out of the country so he doesn't have to pay a penny in taxes, but he wants to make sure that you never get away with any of that. So make sure you look after that. Then they talked about how they're addressing the recruitment and retention problem, and to solve that problem, they've decided they're going to be throwing money at it, of course. Members will receive $10,000 upon completing of basic training. So even though the basic training is what most people would consider to be not very difficult, you only have to do a couple of push-ups and a bit of a walk, they're going to give you $10,000 for completing that. Because up to that point, I think you have the right to wash out. So if you stay all the way to the end, here's your $10,000. On top of you, which will immediately put you, if you're basic pay, because the basic pay is now $53,000 a year, they're going to give you $10,000, which will put you at $63,000, which will also move you up from one tax bracket to another. Then they'll give you 20 grand once you've qualified for a trade. So whatever, there's the list of trades in the military is quite extensive. It ranges from heavy mechanic to moving freight around. You could learn how to be, there's a lot of things to learn, and that's a good idea. You should probably consider that if you're in a position where you can't afford to pay the provincial rates of some education. It's quite extensive. It's a considerable amount of money. And so they'll give you 20 grand if you complete that. That could take a couple of years. And then once you've completed your first contract, if you sign on again, they'll give you another 20 grand. This is in this new announcement. So they're trying to add that money in there. And I don't know that after years of being tone policed that people are sticking around. I'm pretty sure it's quite the opposite, actually. Another thing they've done is offered people money if you want to be a teacher. They're giving you more money. I just love the terminology in this. I mean, poorer wording you could not consider. Changes to environmental allowances. Now, you hear environmental allowances and you think in your mind, what, they're paying me to be worried about how much carbon I put up into the air? Of course, what they mean is, are you in the environment of a submarine? Are you in the environment of a frigate? Are you in the environment of serving up north? That's the military term for it, right? What environment you happen to be in, not the environment. But still, I mean, you read the room, And so they're going to give you a little bit of money for that. And then if you're up north, they'll give you that little bit of money plus an additional $50 a day. So that might help people. Then they went after the moving problems where guys could be, transferred from the base, but their wife and kids have to stay behind. And they offered a whole bunch of money for that, 13 grand every time it happens. And then, the second, if it happens a fourth time, they'll actually give you 20 grand. And in my mind, I'm thinking the rates of rent in this country, 13 grand is nothing. Oh, don't worry about it. They say we're going to give you also cost of living increases for your family that has to stay behind. We're going to let you cover food and all that stuff. They're not saying we're going to make sure that you will always have a place to stay rent free no matter where you get stationed. No, because they're hoping to claw all this money back through taxes. And of course, that's the problem, isn't it? They don't have a clue what the military lifestyle is like. They're only sitting in a room listening to people try to tell them what they've heard from people who live in the military lifestyle. And I don't care what anybody says. One of the hardest aspects of the military is being separated from your family. I mean, it's one of the primary reasons that you do it. And yet you're watching your kids grow up from webcam. I mean, I don't want to go too far into that in this one. I just want to point out how nothing they put there makes any sense to the guy or the human that's living on the ground and is being put through this. But they feel like if they just throw big numbers at people and try to pretend that they're going to write you checks and that everything is going to be paid for by the government, you'll all of a sudden come signing up like no problem at all. Despite the fact that Mark Carney has a bought and paid for press corps that follows him around, sometimes they ask him questions that he doesn't have the answer to, or he's afraid of the answer. One way or the other, he ends up tripping and falling quite a lot. This is the same situation right now when he was asked about Israel, because he said some things and Israel has said some stuff back. And he was asked about it at this particular press conference because, when you talk about sticking your nose into a military conflict and then make a military announcement, it stands to reason that you're going to be asked about that.
Hi, Mr. Prime Minister. Kyle Duggan from the Canadian Press. Can I get your reaction to Israel saying that it's Israel planning to take over Gaza City?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Well, I would say first, we join others, many others, in viewing that this is wrong.
You could see there he has no idea what to say. That's important, not because of the conflict itself, but because this man is writing checks that he wants us, or the men behind him, men and women behind him in the shot, to perhaps cash. I mean, what are you talking about? If you don't understand what's going on, don't go sticking our noses in it. That's not good leadership. It's certainly not good diplomacy. And it's certainly not a thing that Canada can back up. So, you know what? Just Let's worry about the fact that the rent prices in this country are through the roof and that we have more corporate landlords than we actually have homeowners. Before we move on to the very last foolishness that came out of Mark Carney and how it's a big flag for people that might be considering joining the military and how it's going to impede us rebuilding our military in this country, I want to speak to some of you that were asking me why Putin would be worrying about Canada. I did a video there the other day about how Putin going to Alaska was a slap in the face diplomatically to Mark Carney, the Liberal government, and all of the actions that Canada has taken in this Ukrainian conflict, a conflict that goes back to at least 900 AD. So I just want to show you a couple things from the Prime Minister's own desk, or from his own website. Since the beginning of 2022, Canada has committed $19.7 billion in multifaceted support for Ukraine. This includes $12 billion in direct financing assistance, the highest in the G7 on a per capita basis. So Canada has given more to the conflict than any other G7 country per capita, meaning each of us, me and you, have paid more than even the Americans have paid, because per capita, that's what it means. Then we can see there's a lot of money there. It's $20 billion that we've sent to this conflict, and somehow you want to believe that Putin's ignoring that. However, the one that really is important is, as part of the 2024 Fall Economic Statement, the federal government announced last year its intention to double down on our efforts to support Ukraine, including through proposed legislative changes that will ensure profits from frozen Russian assets are used to rebuild Ukraine. So investments, foreign investments in Canada that originate in Russia have been seized, and any of the money that they generated, any of the interest payments that might have come from the bank, the government of Canada wants to take control of and give them to the people on the ground in Ukraine. And you think in your mind that Vladimir Putin isn't aware of that? I mean, this is the Liberal government and their desire to seize people's bank accounts. Really, there should be legislation to prevent that. In this country, you should have the right. I mean, I get it, but this is not, crimes money. This is not money that the Russian government has made because they're, smuggling in illegal things through the border. This is foreign investment, and the Canadian government has seized it for spite. And then you really believe that Putin isn't aware of that? Like, he doesn't have people and supporters in Russia telling him that it's maybe not even some of his own money? Mark Carney was asked about some of the bad press the Canadian military has received. There was a Facebook group that got some bad coverage. And Mark Carney's answer, however, tells everything you need to know if you're out there considering what you should do if you should take your future into the military.
The first is to take every situation seriously, to be absolutely transparent about the situation, obviously having to respect due process and disciplinary or court proceedings that can evolve. And what comes with that and being systematic is you survey the forces and you have mechanisms to discover, as you should in any organization, your organization, the Government of Canada, where you can report where there are harassment issues or issues of hate speech or other elements.
Well, there you have it. That's the kind of culture that the Liberal government is pushing in. Now, remember, Canada's highest ranking officer, military officer, spent the last 5 years of her career being the DEI captain of the military, right? Like, she was the highest ranking DEI member in Canada's military. And then when her boss retired, they gave her control of the entire army. So you can appreciate what kind of lens, what kind of culture that is going to be putting into the military. And then you can hear from the sitting prime minister how not only do you have to worry about being hauled in front of a civilian court, in front of people that have no idea what you go through on every single solitary day, who understand not the words honor and commitment, who don't appreciate any of those kinds of things. Further, however, you are going to have to rely on people to protect your back. You need to trust these people with your very life. And at any given time, one of them might get into a bad mood and make a complaint against you because you spoke to them in a harsh tone or called them a a name that they don't want to hear, or said something to them that you know to be true, but they can't handle it. So they've gone ahead and complained to their boss about you. And now those people who you're supposed to be trusting with your very life have turned you in because you might have said something off the cuff that that certain aspects of the culture don't agree with and are desperately trying to change. And we all know that there are certain groups that get targeted without any problem at all. Like, we have all kinds of things said on the internet from certain aspects of culture that are negative, hateful, and aggressive and threatening to other aspects of the culture. And none of these people bat an eyelash. But if we were to reverse the roles, it would be, the end of times kind of stuff. And that is important, not so much to this conversation in that respect, though I do believe it to be wrong, and it should be one standard for everybody. However, if you're a young man and you want to, come into the military, how can you let your guard down? How can you tell yourself that you can trust the person beside you if you can't even be who you really truly are? If you can't speak off the cuff in the way that men do, if you can't do the locker room talk, that's not the kind of culture that is indicative to trusting the guy beside you with your life. That's the kind of culture where men are going to be like, you know what? It's not really a lot of money, and I'm pretty sure that I can get a loan to become an electrician in whatever province I happen to be living in. And I don't really want to defend a woke government. I don't really want to put my life on the line to defend woke leadership. And they say this answer with a straight face, not realizing that that is one of the primary reasons that they can't get any new recruitment. It's not so much to do with the lack of equipment. It's not so much to do with the lack of pay. It's the idea that the people at the top have no grasp of what it means, and that they want to impose upon you this woke ideology that they think you will have to take because they're in charge. And they don't want to grasp the concept. They don't want to admit to themselves that one of the biggest reasons people are staying away is because the woke culture, the concepts that it is imposing, is creating a very hostile environment for people who are just trying to go about their day, looking for a laugh, looking to blow off a little bit of steam, and looking to know that in the end of the day, they at any given moment have to be called upon to put their lives between the enemy and that very government. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I'm sure they'll be lined up around the corner for that 10 grand you promised them, because that sounds like a good trade, right? I'm telling you right now, there are guys that there's no most of the men that I have ever met in my life, and that's quite a considerable amount. And it's I'm a Canadian and I've traveled all over it. So I can assure you that I have eaten dinner with all shapes and sizes, as the expression goes. And if you said to them, you know what, you've just gone through 3 years of horrible woke tone policing, but I'll give you 20 grand if you sign up for another 3 years, buddy, he'd be like, you know what, you couldn't pay me enough. And they'll say, no, thank you very much. Have a nice day. And let's be straightforward. Most of you listening to my voice could understand that if you're in a job where you can't be yourself, if you're in a job where you're constantly under the scrutiny of the person above you, your boss, and you don't know from left to right who you can trust, if you can trust your neighbors or not, why would you continue to function in that toxic environment if you didn't have to? And of course, this is the problem, the primary problem. Like I said before, we have top-down policy issues in this country that are making the standard of living for the commoner bad. That's just my opinion. You can let me know what your opinion is down in the comments. I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with all of your socials. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.